Good day everyone and welcome back to our lesson. This is Magia H. Today we'll be taking a look at working with ratios and percentage as part of our lesson. We'll be taking over or continuing with chapter 2, which is the business concept. So this lesson that we'll be dealing with will be starting from page 110 to 114, which before you actually come to this lesson, make sure that you have studied lesson 8 or you have read the slides for lesson 8 and also watched the recording for lesson 8. So here below down there is also a recording for lesson 9 which you can also watch, which was also a pre-recorded version. So please make sure you also get to watch that. This will also be a supplement video if you also already watched lesson 9 recording that is uploaded through the link that is here on YouTube. So by the end of today's lesson, which is lesson 9, you should be able to do the following: understand how to work with ratios and fraction, calculate sharing in accordance with ratios, understanding how to work with proportions and rates, understand the relationship between decimal fraction and percentage, understand how and why the mathematical concept will be beneficial in a media organization and the world of work, convert a decimal or fraction to percentage, and converting percentage into decimal or fraction, and lastly to express one number as a percentage of another. So these are all the lesson outcome for today. So what I will do is that I'm going to switch to our textbook and then I'm going to be explaining what giving you a lesson guys based on the textbook, because on the slide there isn't much that I can put on the slide. So we're going to be using mostly the textbook to explain most of the concept as well as the calculations, and then from there you guys will actually have to perform some of the activities that are within there to make sure that you fully understood the concept. And if you fail to understand that, you can revisit the recording, learn again, and then repractice. If you get stuck, that's when you can get to consult me or contact me to say that I'm stuck with the following concept, I need assistance. I'll be able to assist you. So today we'll be working with ratios, percentage, and decimal. So what I'm going to do is that let me switch to the textbook and start with our lesson from that side. Okay, here we are. So in terms of today's lesson, we'll be working with percentage. So with percentage, it says that we often come across expressions such as 10% discount on all items, 15% interest per annum, 40% on all participant. The sample percentage used is to indicate percentage, which is the 0 out of 0. It represents the percentage. So the word percent simply means everything will be out of 100. So when we say 30%, that means that is 30 out of 100. And to give an example, it says that if we say Tolani says that 30% of his salary is spent on food, he means that out of every 100 of his take-home pay, he spent 30 rand on food, which is 30 out of 100 is spent on food. So if John says 25% of the staff travel to work by bus, she means that 25 out of every 100 staff member travel to work by bus, or 25 over 100 staff travel by bus. So that is the simplification of percentage. So percentage is an expression of another number through a percentage form. So we can convert a fraction to a percentage and decimal to a percentage. So percentage is actually a representation of the two, because a percent can be written as a fraction and can still be written as a decimal, which we have covered previously. So here it says that the relationship between the decimal fraction and percentage is that we have seen how decimal can be converted into fraction and vice versa. So it is feasible to convert decimal and fraction into percentage to find out how much does that represent over the whole total portion of that particular object or amount. So we're going to make an example below, then we're going to take from the example and see how the example gets to explain to us how the relationship between decimal and fraction and percentage works. So the example says that a learner at a graphic design school wrote 3 tests for a subject and received the following marks. Test 1, he wrote a test from a different subject. It says that a learner at a graphic design wrote three tests for a subject. So it's for one subject. So on that one subject, the following happened. The learner wrote test one, which was 16 out of 25, and the learner again wrote test two, which was 68 out of 100, and the learner wrote test three, which was 48 out of 60. Now the question will be, can you spot which test did the learner actually get to achieve the highest mark? So if you were to take the look into this fraction that has been given based on the total mark that the student get out of the total test mark, you will be able to see that we are trying to compare things that are not within this, that are not having the same value or the same denominator. So meaning that we cannot actually compare this fraction by just looking into them based on their own terms. So therefore, the best way to do that will actually be to convert this fraction into percentage, meaning that we will be calculating the student marks based on out of 100%, so that we can be able to compare the three tests and see how much did the student score on each based over the percentage of the total marks that the student wrote the test for. For example, test 1 was out of 25, so therefore we'll calculate a percentage of that to say that if this was to convert it into percentage, how much did the student achieve out of 100 from this test, and then we're going to apply the same for test 2 and test 3, and then from there, since we'll be having both the same base, which is out of 100, we can therefore actually get to compare all the test. So here it says that it is difficult to determine by just looking at this figure which test has the best result. So it will be easier to compare this result if we converted to percentage as follows. So meaning that when we convert this into percentage, we're gonna go and say 16 divided by 25, therefore multiplied by 100. So what is actually happening is that this is a fraction. So for this to be converted into a percentage, we have to either first convert this into decimal. From decimal, we convert it back to percentage. As we know that from our decimal, two decimal place represents the hundreds and percentage are measured out of hundreds. So therefore, meaning that we're going to round off the student marks based on the hundredth decimal, which is the two decimal place. Therefore, we're going to calculate the percentage of that student. And we round off to two decimal. We're going to take a look at the third amount and round off to the nearest percentage, which will actually give us an indication of how much the student scored out of 100%. Therefore, we're going to apply the same. So we have already covered how to convert fraction to decimal. So you just apply that principle and then you'll get there. But another method, instead of doing that, you are saying 16 out of 100 uh, multiplied by 100%. So meaning that one of the amount will be multiplied by 100, one of the amount will not be multiplied by 100, which will actually end up giving you to say 16 multiplied by 100. That's going to give you a certain amount that's going to be divided by 25. So let's take a look at the solution of the book. So it says 16 out of 25 multiplied by 100 will be equivalent to 64%. So, and in terms of the other test 2, so if you notice something on test 2, it's already sitting out of 100. So if sometimes you find that the value that you're trying to convert into percentage is already having a base of 100, therefore the amount on top become or represent the percentage. If the base or the denominator is actually out of 100, the numerator represents the percentage, so nothing will actually get to change. Like the one 68 out of 100, so it will become 68%. If it was 42 out of 100, that will become 42%. And then test 3 student scored 48 out of 60. This multiplied by 100 will actually end up giving us what we call 80%. So meaning that the student on test 3 scored 80%. So if we were to compare the test now, we could actually go and say, let's take a look at the one that the student scored the highest. So meaning if we take a look at test 1 to test 3, the student scored the highest on test 3, which is 80 out of 100, meaning that for each and every mark that is there out of 100, the student scored 80. So if we convert this to 60, that will be equivalent to 48 out of 60, meaning that for every mark that was there out of 60, therefore the student managed to score 48 marks, which is equivalent to 80%. Therefore, we can actually compare the three and say that the one with the highest is test 3 followed by test 2 and then test 1. And then again, we can convert decimal or fraction to percentage, where we apply the same principle that we did to say that if we have got 0,43, this is over the first number that we have here, we call that this is a ones. So this represents, in terms of percentage, this will actually represent that it is over 3 times or to 100 by a specific number. Let's take a look at 3,75, for example. This means that the amount that we are trying to calculate is already 3 times over the 100, meaning that we're going to be having an amount over 100% by 300 and something. For 300 and something, the something will be coming from the numbers behind the decimal, to say that the decimal will represent the tenth value and the ones value. So we do know that when we're converting this into a fraction, basically what we performed last time is to say that if we're to convert this into a fraction, this will become the value within the tenth. So meaning that this will be 7 out of 10. And then if we're to convert this will be 5 out of 100. So therefore, if we're to convert this to value without the 3, that will be 75 out of 100. But because we have got the ones here, that's going to be 3, showing that the value that we are trying to calculate is 3 times over the 100. So this means that it's going to be 375. Based on this one, since we don't have any value that is above the hundreds, we only have the value that is within the tenth and the hundred. So therefore, when you take a look at this, we're going to say this is 43 out of 100. So that's converting decimal into percentage in a simplest format. And then you can perform the same on this one to say that here we don't have any value that is above the 3, that is above the hundreds. We don't have a value that is above the tens. We have got the value within the hundreds, which is 2 out of 100. We've got the value within the thousand. We've got the value within the 10,000. So when we round this or convert this into percentage, remember it's out of 100. So what we're gonna do is that out of 100, we stop here within the second decimal and take a look at the numbers before the comma and the one before the decimal. So if we've got a number before the comma, that number actually tends to be multiplied by 100 to give us the value, to say, for example, like the above one, to say 3 to multiply by 100, giving us 300 plus the numbers behind the comma, which is 75, giving us 375. So for this one, we don't have any of those values. So we're going to have 2 representing 2 out of 100 plus any number. Then we'll put a comma because we're done with the hundreds value, and say comma, any number that is behind the comma, we put it as it is as well, and our percentage as a comma, as decimal. So they become the first decimal, second decimal, continuing. So for example, I'm just going to write something like this, and then we're going to convert it into a decimal. Okay, this is a secured book, so I cannot actually get to write that. So if I was to say that we have got 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So meaning that if we're to convert that into a decimal, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, we're going to take a look at the 2 digits that represent the hundreds, because the percentage is represented by the 100. So therefore we're going to have 0, 1, 2. So 1, 2 already becomes what? 12 out of 100. And then any number that comes after the value that represents the 100, which is the 2 decimal, which is third and fourth, will become the new first decimal on our percentage. Meaning that if we've got 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, therefore that will be 12,34 over 100. So that becomes our new percentage. So that is it in terms of converting percentage into decimal into percentage and fraction into percentage. So please still use the same principle that we did on lesson 8 and 7, so that you can be familiar more with converting the decimal to percentage and fraction to percentage in a simpler method. So it still needs you to understand lesson 8 and lesson 7. And then I'm going to move towards some of the fraction or some of the percentage that we know of that represent some of the fraction and decimals. So we have got 10%. 10% in terms of a fraction, it normally represents 1 out of 10, which is also representing 0,01. So this also represents 0.01, and we've got 12 1 out of 2 percentage, which also represent 1 out of 8. So therefore this will be actually equivalent to another decimal. So I forgot the decimal for this one, which we can actually calculate to say 1 divided by 8. This will represent 0.125. So in terms of a percentage, in terms of decimals, so this is what it will actually represent. And when we have got 16 2 out of 3, in terms of fraction, this will represent 1 out of 6, which 1 out of 6 could actually which will be representing 0.16 comma 6666667. So 2 out of 3 represents 0.66666, which we already know that that's a non-terminating decimal. So therefore you can calculate, or already aware that if you have got 16 2 out of 3 as a percentage, it's equivalent to 1 over 6. So these are type of equivalent fraction to decimals. 20% is equivalent to a fraction of 1 out of 5, which is 0.2. And then 25% is equivalent to fraction 1 over 4, which is again equivalent to decimal 0.25. So these are the type of fractions that you get to familiarize yourself with, and if you had to convert them into percentage, it will make it much easier for you to understand, or to actually get to calculate how much will be the percentage that will be coming. To say that, let's use an example of this 1 over 4, to say that if we've got 1 over 4, which is equivalent to 25%, it means that 2 over 4 will actually be equivalent to 50%, and 3 out of 4 will actually be equivalent to 75%, and 4 out of 4 will be equivalent to 100%. So that just gave you that mentality. It boosts your mentality in terms of thinking capacity, in terms of numbers, to say that if we're to work with the following numbers or ratios or percentage, this will be end up being the result, because you're already having the mental thinking of the fraction to decimal. So this is the importance of those, to say that if we're in a work environment, you're actually calculating a fraction of something, to say that we've got the following numbers of viewers, and these numbers of viewers, they are all coming from different stream, or they're here for different shows. So therefore let's calculate a percentage of each show based on the numbers of viewers, to say that this show is actually having a total of 5,000 out of the total of viewers that we have, or subscribers. So therefore you're going to be applying ratios as well as percentage. And then there is an activity that I want you guys to go and perform, and also take a look at the solution at the end of the book, so that you can get to practice more and get to have more understanding of the fraction, of the decimal to percentage and fraction to percentage. Expressing one number as a percentage of another. So this is what I was busy explaining, to say that 1 out of 4 can be expressed as a decimal to 0.25, which could also be expressed as a percentage of 25. So here they're showing you how it's done. So the first step is to carefully convert this into decimal, and from decimal you can therefore convert it into a percentage. That's the best way if you want not to make any mistake. So you can apply that. If you don't apply that, we're gonna apply the what we call the multiplication of fractions. So we know that 100% is equal to 100 out of 100. So meaning that we're gonna say 1 multiplied by 100, giving us 100, and therefore 4 multiplied by 100 giving us 400, which will still get back to simplifying as 1 over 4, and then we'll still have to convert that back to decimal and recalculate it back to 25%. So that's why I'm saying that the best way to calculate percentage of a fraction is to actually convert the fraction to decimal, and then convert that decimal back into percentage by looking at the value. If the value is 0.25, that's 25%. If it's 0.6, that's 60%. If it's 0.1234, that's 12.34%. So that's how easily you can convert a fraction to decimal and into percentage. So that is the relationship between the two. So for today's lesson, we are going to be covering mostly, I'm just gonna go to today's lesson so that we covers what we have to work with for today. So today we'll be covering what we call working with ratios. So working with ratio, it's a way of actually trying to identify the relationship between two or more numbers. So it says that a ratio is a way to express a relationship between two or more numbers, which enable us to make comparison between them. So when we're working with ratios, we're actually converting everything back into normally what we call either percentage or a fraction. So if you are finding that you're comparing two things that do not have the same base or have the same base, therefore you can use what we call a ratio conversion and be able to identify the ratio of that particular object to say that the relationship between the two is that this one is more than this time by this one, meaning that if we're to increase this one, this means that this will also increase or decrease by this much. So ratio represent the relationship between the two that could affect the other one when the other one increase. So here it says that suppose that a bowl hold 8 slices of bread and 8 slices of bread, which 3 are white and 5 are brown. So what is the ratio between the number of white slice and the number of brown slice? So under this one, we can say that there are 3 white slice for every 5 brown slice. So meaning that if we were to have 10 brown slice, we do know that we're gonna also be having what? 6 white slice of bread within that bread. So the ratio of white light to brown is written as 3 to 5. So meaning that the total number of slices that are available will be 3 plus 5. So 3 plus 5 represent the total number of slices of bread that are available, and the ratio 3 to 5 means that 3 of the slices are white and 5 of the slices are brown. So this is the expression of the ratio 3 to 5. So here they also give an example to say that, for example, a large media conglomerate employing 2,400 men and 3,600 women, the ratio of the men to women will be as follows: 2,400 to 3,600. But these dots that you're seeing here represent the division, to say that this can also represent divide in other means. But under this method, we're gonna do them as the following, to say that this ratio here is actually representing 2,400 men and 3,600 women. So meaning that for every 3,600 women that are there, there are 2,400 men. So this ratio can still be simplified if you still remember the simplification that we performed during our ratio calculations. So our fraction calculation, to say that we need to find a common factor which will be both used to divide both to simplify the fraction and find the best simplest fraction of this ratio. So therefore, for this one, we do know that they are both in thousands, so therefore we can actually get to divide this by 100 and see what will actually be their lowest value, which will be 24 to 36. And 24 to 36 can still be simplified. You can either use 12, which is gonna give you straight 2 to 3, but you can use 4. If you use 4, you're gonna get 6 to 9, and from 6 to 9 you'll therefore get to simplify it back to 2 or to 3, meaning that based on the following ratio is to say that for every 3 women that are within this media company, there will be 2 men, meaning that if we have got 6 women, we expect the company to have 4 men. So this is the ratio that is there within the company. So meaning that for every, this is the hiring policy of the company. We have to say that for every 3 women that gets to be hired, 2 men will be hired, so that the ratio gets to remain the same. And therefore, the total number of employees within that company will be 2 plus 3, giving us 5. So if we go to this one and say 2,400 plus 3,600, that will be 5,000. Sorry, that will be 6,000. So this is how we get to calculate ratios, to say that this is how the ratio gets to work. And this can be expressed as 2 out of 5 and 3 out of 5, to say that for each and every individual within this company, we've got 2 out of 5 that are men and 3 out of 5 that are women. And then for every 3 women that are there within that company, there are 2 men. So this is the expression that you can give in terms of ratios. So this is still another, they are continuing to give explanation to say that let's take a look at the following. So far we have compared two quantities, but you can simply compare any number of quantities by means of ratio. So let's take a look at the following example. 200 kg of certain concrete mixed, it's made by mixing 40 kg cement, 40 kg sand, 120 kg of gravel. So therefore the ratio for the cement, sand, gravel is as follow: 40, 40, 40 and 120, meaning that for every 200 kg there will be 40 cement, 40 kg of sand, 120 kg of gravel. So this can be simplified by dividing everything by 42, 1 to 1, 3. So meaning that if we were to get the full ratio of this, we can add all of these together and say 40 plus 40 plus 120, that's 200, and that's 200 kg, meaning that for each and every concrete there will be 40 out of 100, 40 kg out of 100 will be cement, and 40 kg out of 200 will be cement, and 120 kg from this certain concrete mix will be gravel road. So, and this simplified could also be mentioned to say that for every 120 gravel that will be there on each and every concrete mix, there will be 40 kg of sand and 40 kg of cement. And if meaning that if we have got 240 kg of gravel, this means that we will be having 80 kg of sand and 80 kg of cement within that concrete mix. So that's how we get to explain the ratio in between two things that are not related or two things that are related within one concept. So this is an activity that is there, so you can apply the activity and see what it offers you. And then now we're going to move to ratio to fraction. So ratio to fraction, this is where we get to compare normally in business to say that let's try to see in terms of a ratio. Let's use a ratio to see the profitability of a ratio, the profitability of the company. So we apply ratios, and some of the ratio can be expressed as a fraction, like I already mentioned previously, to say that if you have got 1 to 3, that is same as having 1 out of 4. So previously I used this example above here to say that for every 2 men out of 5 employees will be men, and for every, and therefore 3 of all those 5 employees will be women, and therefore this could actually still be expressed as to say that for every 3 women there will be 2 men, or for every 2 men that are within the company there will be 3 women also working there. So this is the ratio that I get to explain to you guys. Therefore you can say 2 out of 5 employees that are there will be men, and 3 out of 5 employees that are there will be women. So that's another expression. So that's expression ratios into fraction. So like the following example that says Mona and Lerato are going to divide some money, and that money will be divided in the following ratio: 1 to 3. So it means that Mona will receive one part of the money and Lerato 3 parts. So in total there are how many parts? 4, which is 1 plus 3. This means that for Lerato, for Mona, it means that she's going to get 1 out of the 4 parts of the money that is going to be shared, and Lerato will get 3 of the 4 parts of the money that is going to be shared. So that is converting fraction ratios into fraction. So if you see a fraction that is written like this one, 2, a ratio that is written as 2 to 5, it means that for every 7 items, so that's 2 plus 5, that is 7. So for every whatever 7 items that are there, 2 are of this kind and 5 are of this kind. So this is the expression behind ratios to fractions. So you can express ratios as a fraction, and then for every of these, which is 7 plus 4, giving us 11. So therefore for every 11 items that are available, 7 will be of this kind and 4 will be out of 11 will be of this kind, for meaning that for each and every 7 item of this kind there will be 4 of that kind. So that is what we referred as ratios. So for the one above, this one below here is the same as this ratio, but the only difference is that the values are swapped, to say that for every 7 items that are there, 5 will be of this value, and therefore for every 7 that is there, 2 will be of this kind. Therefore, this can be expressed as a ratio of 5 to 2, which is the same as 2 to 5, but vice versa. And then you can express also this one to say that for the all 12 items, 6 of these items will be this kind, and 5 will be this kind, and 1 will be this kind, to meaning that for a mix of 12 items, therefore we expect one, when there is one of these items, there will be 5 of these and 6 of these items. So therefore that is the explanation behind the fraction to ratios and ratios to fraction. So here there are activities which is sharing in accordance with ratios, so that in a business we often encounter instances where ratios are used to share the wealth, cost, assets, and debt. So in partnership, for an instance, the partner must decide how they will divide the profit. This is often referred as profit sharing ratio, to say that if we have got two owners of a business, one contributes 30,000, one contributes 70,000. This means that the total amount contributed by the owners is 100,000. So the owner can decide to say that for each and every profit generated, we're going to share it based on their total contribution to the company. So meaning that if we go and say we have got one invested 30,000, one invested 70,000, so that will be the ratio 70 to 30 to 70. So therefore, when we calculate the ratio for that, we're going to convert it to a fraction end up being what? 30 out of 100, 30,000 out of 100,000, which can be simplified to 30 over 1, which means that this person will be sharing 30% of the profit and the other one will be sharing 70% of the profit. So that's working with ratios, from ratio to fraction, from fraction to percentage. So therefore, these are the link in between all of those concepts. So please take a look at the activities here. Make sure that you practice the activity so that you get to understand the concept much better, and make sure that you fully the concept, understand the workings, the applications, the concept, so that your education or your mentally thinking in terms of working with numbers becomes much better. So when you're there in the world of work, you can actually get to perform this calculation within your within your brains, without having to apply them on the paper. So this also allows you to be able to be smart and work simple, working smart, not harder. So now we'll be taking a working with proportion. We have already covered ratios and fraction. So ratios and fraction actually gets to express everything as a term of a portion, but this time we'll be working with proportion to actually get to split or show the relationship between an increase and decrease within one asset. So here it says that when you talk about a proportion of two quantity increase or decrease at the same rate, this means the ratio of those quantity stays the same all the time. So the example I gave to say that for the company that employs 3 women, will have to employ 2 men. So that's what we call proportion. So that will become the policy of that company, to say that for every 3 women that we're gonna employ, we're gonna have to employ 2 men. So that will always remain the ratio within that company. So here it says that when an increase or a decrease in one quantity leads to an increase or decrease in another, the quantity, we say that these amounts are in direct proportion, or the item is in direct proportion. We're gonna use the following example to say that, for example, if a cost of 2 tons of material is 5,527.50 cents, what will the cost of 5 tons be? So under this scenario, we're being asked to say that if 2 tons are worth 5,527.50 cents, what will be the cost or the worth of 5 tons? So meaning that the ways that we can work this around, we can work this through proportion. So through proportion, it means that if the price of the ton remains the same, therefore the cost of tons will be 5 times more than the price of 1 ton. So therefore it says that if the price stays the same per ton, the cost of 5 tons will be more than the cost of 2 tons. So we simply have to find the cost of 1 ton, then multiply this by 5. So therefore, to find the price of 1 ton is to go and say the price of 2 tons divided by 2, therefore, which is representing 2 tons, will give us the price per ton, which is going to be 2,763.75 cent. And for us to actually get to calculate the value of 5 ton, we're gonna go and say 2,763.75 multiplied by 5. This will give us a total value of 5 ton being 13,818.75 cent. But in another method that you can use is to go and say the value of 5 ton can be actually be given as follows, which we know that the value of 2 ton is 5,527, and we already know that the value of 5 ton will actually be more than the value of 2 tons. So therefore we can actually go and say 5 divided by 2, which means that this will actually give us an indication to say that how many times will be the value of 5 tons compared to 2 tons. So that would be 5 out of 2, giving us 2,5, meaning that the value of 2 tons will be 2.5 times more than the value of 2 tons. So meaning that we can actually go and say from the value of 2 tons, which is 527.50 cent multiplied by 2,5, which means that this 2,5 is representing the worth of 2 tons against the value of 2 tons. It represents the value of 5 tons compared to the value of 2 tons, meaning that the value of 5 tons is now bigger than the value of 2 tons by 2.5 times. So meaning that if we were to look for the value of 5 tons, we could actually say the difference, which is 2,5, and multiply it by the value of 2 tons, and we're gonna get our value. So meaning that it's gonna still give us 13,818.75 cent. So here it says that this procedure is called the unitary method. So the method of finding what 1 unit will cost. So this is the one that I applied first, of saying this divide by this and multiply by 5. So the one that they used here, it's another method calculating the value of tons to say how much 5 tons gonna be more than the 2 tons in terms of value. So meaning that's 5 out of 2, giving us 2,5. So therefore it means that the value of 5 ton will be 2.5 times than 1 ton, because 5 ton is bigger than but by 5 ton by 2.5 times. So meaning that its value will also be 2.5 times bigger. So therefore get to multiply by that 2.5 to the value of 2 tons and get the value of 5 tons. So that is working with proportion, from fraction to proportion, which we get to calculate the new value based on the ratios. So then we also get to work with rates. So working with rates are used when we need to compare two quantities that are not measured in the same unit. For example, kilometers traveled within a time frame are measured in hours, or the amount of petrol used to travel to a specific distance are measured in kilometers. So therefore, a definition of a rate could be identified as that a rate is a fraction used to compare quantities of different things. Then here it says that everyday rates that we use is, for example, the interest rate, which is the interest compared to the borrowing of money, and also the exchange rate, which is also the comparison of currency to another. So when we use interest rate, we compare the money that you borrow against the money that you will pay off, which are totally two different amounts. So meaning that the difference between those amounts will refer it as the interest rate. And when we're talking about the difference between the South African currency and the US currency, or the euro or the British pounds, we'll compare that the difference between the two will actually be what we referred as the exchange rate. So we know that now from there, the definition of a rate is to compare two different things that are not of the same value. So it gets to give us the equivalent in terms of the changes in the two value to say that these values are different in terms of the following ratio or rate. So here, if we take a look at the example, I'm going to perform the activity since there is no example that is performed here, is to go and say that a manufacturer pays 56,000 rand for 35 machine. This is a manufacturer who pays 56,000 for 35 machines. So no discount is received if fewer than 40 machines are purchased in one order. And thereafter, a general bulk trade discount of 10% applies. So what will the total price of purchase of 65 machines be? Ignore VAT. So if we were to buy 35 machines, based on this company policy, it says that no discount is received if fewer than 40 machines are bought. So meaning that they have got a limit to give discount to say that if we were to buy 40 machines, you're not gonna receive any discount. But if you buy 41 machines, any machine thereafter, which is above 41, will actually get to earn 1% discount. So we call this the discount after. So the other terminology that is used for this is called the discount after, meaning that there is what we call a markup to say that we can only give you discount if you only get to buy this following item. To say that if you buy more than one item, for every item that is above one, we're gonna give you a certain discount. So this is what this example actually get to explain. To say that for each and every more than 40,000 machines that you buy, thereafter you will receive a 10% discount on each and every machine. And then now the question says that what will the total price of 65 machines be? So the first thing that we have to do or to perform for this activity would actually get to calculate the value of one machine to say that if 35 machines, if we're to buy 35 machines, it will cost us 56,000. This means that 56,000 divided by 35 machines, it means that we are spending 1,600 per machine. And therefore, based on this activity, it says that what will the total price of 65 machines be? Meaning that for the first 40 machines, this person will not receive discount based on the company policy. But thereafter, anything that is above 25, if it is anything that is above 40, this means that this person will actually be earning what? Discount on each and every machine that is purchased after on that same bulk discount, not individually, but after. So meaning that the company or the customer cannot be given discount if they come and buy 40 machines today and then comes and buy 20 tomorrow, meaning that on the 20 that they are buying tomorrow, it will be a different transaction which will be below what 40. They won't receive discount. Only on general bulk, when they are buying everything in bulk and that is above 40, that's when they receive a 10% discount on everything that is above 40. So under this one, we have to calculate first what much will be the discount. So 1,600 multiplied by 10%, that will actually give us 160, meaning that for every item that is gonna be above 40, this customer will actually receive 160 discount. So this means that this customer will end up paying, the customer will end up paying 1,440. So meaning that for every machine that is bought from 40 going upwards, the customer could only pay 1,440 instead of 1,600. So for the ones that we are given to say that the purchases is 65 machines, meaning that 40 machines will be bought at 1,600. That's gonna give us 64,000, and therefore 25 will be bought at a discount of 10%, which the price of that will be 1,440, giving us 36,000. So therefore our total cost will be 64,000 plus 36,000. So that means that the total cost or purchase price for 65 machine will be 100,000, meaning that this person will actually pay how much? 100,000. So that is working with discount, which is a percentage. So it's gonna be calculated out, so meaning that we're gonna calculate the rate of percentage or discount from the price per unit, not on the bulk price. So when you calculate this on a bulk price, it's only when the customer says that no discount is received for 40 machines, for 40 or less machine. But if the customer buys anything above 40, they will receive 10% on the total machines bought, meaning that that's a different story now, meaning that the 10% is no longer applied on only the ones that are above 65, but on the total machine of 65. That is when you can go and say 65 multiplied by 1600, then remove the 10% discount. So that is when you use. But if the discount is only applied on things that are after 40 after 40 machines are purchased, therefore it only applies to those, not the total bulk purchase of 65. So that is it in terms of working with rates, percentage and ratios. So let's take a look in our lesson and see what we have there on the slide. So we've done working with a percentage. It says that from fraction we're going to convert fraction into decimal, and from decimal therefore we're going to convert this into percentage, to say that if we have got 10 out of 100, this is equivalent to, in a fraction decimal, this is equivalent to 0.10. And then if we're rounding this, or if we're converting this into a fraction, we're gonna round this off to the nearest hundreds, and then we're gonna convert it to percentage. That is gonna give us 10%. So this means that the word percent means out of every century, or out of every 100. So 25% therefore means 25 out of 100, which can be converted to decimal to 0.25. So these are things that we already explained, and we also covered it with ratios, that to say that ratios a way of expressing the relationship between two or more numbers. For example, profit sharing ratios, gross profit margin ratios. So gross profit margin ratios, we are actually comparing to say that what is the ratio of cost of sales to the profit that have been generated. So that is gross profit percentage. So it measures sales, cost of sales against the sales by subtracting that, and then we get a value that is called gross profit, to say that the contribution in terms of after deducting of cost of sales, this is how much profit we manage to generate from there. So that is the relationship between the gross profit margin ratio to sales. So it's measured against the sales value, to say that based on the sales value after deduction of cost of sales, this is how much profit we manage to generate. And then you can therefore perform others, such as the net profit margin ratio. So they will also be measuring to say that after all deduction of all expenses that were incurred to generate this revenue, this is how much profit we managed to generate. So that will be the net profit margin ratio. So this is where we get to your ratio in a business, to get us to give us an indication of the profitability of the business in terms of ratio, where we can compare to other companies that are operating within other sectors. Or to say that let's compare our media company to the other media company that have got that operate with the same policies and standard as ours. Because you cannot go and say you make a profit of 40,000 and the other one they made a profit of 60,000, and say that these guys are making more profit than us. So you cannot compare profit based on just the amount of net profit. You need to compare the profit based on the amount incurred to generate that revenue. You might find that for them to incur that revenue, they for them to incur that profit, they incurred expenses that were over 1 million, whereas on your side, for you to incur that profit of 40,000, you incurred only 500,000. So you'll get to see that your company is being more profitable compared to the other company, because for them to generate that, they had to spend more. So those ratio gets to give us that indication. So that's why we get to work with ratios within our business to understand the profitability that we are currently generating. And then we also talk about proportion. So proportion we already covered that. We talk about the proportion when two quantity increase or decrease at the same rate. So this is the end of our lesson. Please make sure that you understand, you practice, you learn, and you grab the concept and do more practical questions so that the concept can sink much better into our brains, and therefore from there it will allow us to mentally be fit to perform calculation, generate ideas that requires calculation at a faster pace. So that will be all for today's lesson. Please enjoy the rest of your day and tune in for lesson 10.